I'll take care of it.
Yeah, you're room temperature.
Who else are we expecting?
We have everybody we're gonna have.
Looks that way.
Johnson, or Hobson, or Gill.
Is everyone here?
Everyone that's coming.
Everyone that'll be here tonight, yes, Mr. Watkins.
I show 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting of the East Valley Institute of Technology, number 401 Governing Board, regularly scheduled meeting to order, and ask Mr. Covington to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
My pleasure. Everybody stays. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 3, a presentation, at which time I'll call on Dr. Wilson.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, if you remember, it was probably maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago, something like that. I had a discussion about how at EVIT we believe that we can pay it forward in ways that maybe we haven't been thinking about in years past, specifically students in the foster youth system. And we talked about how the long-term goal is to be able to have a robust number of foster youth on our campus, participating in either high school equivalency programs / our CTE program, or if they're at their home high school, working with our home high schools to get the foster youth here more aggressively and more often. And it has been a challenge because, you know, we went down this pathway kind of eyes wide open and just expecting if we open the doors, it's all going to work itself out. And the truth of the matter is there's a ton of layers on that onion that oftentimes gets super, super frustrating. And so we posted for a foster youth coordinator position, and we had, honestly, probably 75 applicants for the position. I mean, it was a large number of applicants. Out of the 75, I would say probably 50 weren't as qualified as we wanted them to be, but still 25 is a large number. And so we whittled that down, and had rounds of interviews, and we're fortunate to finally settle on the candidate that I honestly believe is going to be able to take us from what we talked about 4 or 5 months ago into a reality. And I believe that because of the background this gentleman has. I'd like to take a minute to introduce you to our new foster youth coordinator, Jerron Neal. He's prior to coming to EVIT, he worked in the foster ed of Arizona, the educational liaison, Arizona Children's Associate, independent living specialist, aide to the adoption of special education kids, special kids program director, home-based youth service coordinator, Boys and Girls Club, East Valley director. He's an incredible basketball coach, and
Excellent.
I didn't pay much attention to that. Yeah, I didn't pay much attention to that. But when you hear how he's developing the program, you will get a sense that he's taking a coach's mentality to growing this opportunity, which is just wonderful. He's married, his wife's a teacher, and I believe have two daughters. So I asked Jerron to be here today just to introduce himself to you so you can meet him and ask him some questions. So Jerron, floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having me. He kind of took a lot of what I was going to say as far as my background and my history.
That's my job.
He's good at it.
But to piggyback on what he said, I've been in this field working with foster youth and at-risk children for over 20 years. He mentioned some of my previous stops. I was a residential counselor with home-based youth services and homeless teams, youth development director for Boys and Girls Club at the East Valley, and dealing with all sorts of at-risk kids from 6 to 18 with that. Education liaison with Foster Ed Arizona, teen coordinator with Aid to the Adoption of Special Kids, independent living specialist with Arizona Children's Association. Even long ago with Tumbleweed, I was in charge of their education program as well. So with my history and working in this field for as long as I have, you can obviously tell I have a passion for working with these youth. jumped at the opportunity to come here and support the existing foster youth we already have on campus, as well as find ways to increase our efforts and bring in a whole new batch of foster youth to get these wonderful CTE programs and their HSEs. And as he mentioned before, I've been coaching basketball as long as I've been working in this field as well. So some of my previous stops, I was the head coach at Chandler Gilbert Community College, an assistant coach at Tohono O'odham Community College down in Tucson, coached Westwind Prep Academy out in Phoenix, Chandler Prep High School, and most recently, before I came here, I was the head coach and athletic director at Bacone College in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So I've had a foot in both of those worlds for as long as I can remember. So I'm happy to be here. We're off to a great start. We've already got some young people enrolled in our program. They're excited about it, and I've only been here for 3 weeks, so I think there's a lot of good things ahead.
So one of the things that was most impressive to me is, I had this vision that, like I said, we open the doors and the folks will just flock here, right? And that was naive. Geron has come in and actually put context and content in ways that are I think will grow it and sustain it. And what I like so much about it is that he's been going out, and correct me if I misspeak, but he's been going out and meeting with some of the foster homes and actually talking to kids at the home. And actually not just saying, hey, come to EVIT and walking away, really charting out the opportunity that exists. And one of the things he said that I thought was so impactful is that there aren't very many opportunities that we're providing for foster youth in the foster youth space. For him to be able to sit down and say, come to our campus, we're going to get you to a high school equivalency, a CTE program. He's going to be here to kind of love up and wrap around you. I just am really excited. I think he is absolutely the right person for the job, and I'm really grateful that he's here.
Again, thank you. Having worked in this field, I know that the GED programs that exist outside, it's kind of like just sign your kid up and leave them. But one of the things, again, with my basketball background is I do go meet the youth at their placement, and it's like a recruiting trip. I bring them merch and bags and lanyards and keys, and most of their team is like, we've never had a GED program come out and recruit our kids to come to the program. So I want them to want to come here. I don't want it to be reluctant, like, oh, I got to get my GED. I want them excited to come here. So again, thank you again.
So I just wanted him to introduce himself to you so you would know the face when you see him around. So thank you, John.
Perfect. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Glad to have you.
See how smart he is? He's leaving. Good hire. That's a good hire right there, yes.
That brings us to agenda item 4, approval of the minutes from the last regularly scheduled meeting. Do I have a motion?
Also moved, Mr. Covington.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Okay. Lane?
Aye.
Covington?
Aye.
Doolin?
Aye.
Fleedham?
Aye.
Hart?
Aye.
Boggs is an aye. Watkins?
Aye. Motion carried.
Motion carries.
That brings up agenda item 5, call to the public. Dr. Wilson, do we have anything here?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Well, then moving on to agenda item 6, that's the consent agenda. And unless there's an objection, we'll combine all, is it A through H?
Yep. Yes.
A through H into one item. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we can approve the consent agenda A through H inclusive.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, I'll ask, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane?
Aye.
Covington?
Aye.
Doolin?
Aye.
Fleedham?
Aye.
Hart?
Aye.
Boggs is an aye. And Watkins?
Aye. Motion carried. That brings up agenda item 7. And in this category, I would like to combine 7A and 7B together, and we'll do C and D separately unless any board member has an objection. Hearing none, then we'll I'll call for a motion for 7A and B, the hiring of new personnel and stipend, lead stipends.
So moved. I'll make the motion.
I'll
Do
second
I
it.
have a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Covington.
Having a motion and a second, I'll call for discussion. Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Cleedum,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. Moving to item 7C, I'll call on Dr. Wilson.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, every year we bring back to you the revised, updated guidelines, hiring salary guidelines. As a reminder, you know, this came out of the work that we did the first couple of years together, in which there really weren't some clear guidelines that we could use in HR in order to place individuals on the salary schedule. So every single year, we come back to you with updated recommendations, and you can see on this, what we're updating is the base salary to reflect a 3% increase. The governing board previously approved a 6% increase for employees. If we don't adjust the base, then we don't get closer to having more competitive, a more competitive base compared to Westmac, or more marketable. What we also don't want to do, though, is have our base reflect what someone who's been here for a year. So historically, what we do is we take the percentage that the governing board increased and reduce it by either a third or a half. You'll also see that we are recommending that we approve the ability for individuals, if they complete a degree during the course of a year, their next contract, to get credit for that. We have that as part of their placement when they come into the organization, but periodically we do have individuals that while they're here, they complete their degree, and there isn't any mechanism to go back and retroactively apply that to their contract. And then you'll see that our partnership with Fountain Hills is changing, and so no longer are we obligated or responsible for managing the staff that's there. So that's why those days are being removed as part of the guidelines to no longer reflect Fountain Hills. So those are the recommendations, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Do I have a motion for approval of the salary guidelines?
So move.
A second?
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, I'll ask for any discussion. Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Cleedum,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. That'll bring us to 7D, health plan benefits, at which time I'll ask Dr. Wilson to speak.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, I'm going to ask Ms. Perez to come up to the podium and give a brief presentation. To set the table, as you may remember, we have said for a bit of time that we wanted to make sure that we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, as well as making sure that we're providing our employees the best health coverage opportunity. And so we took the opportunity this year to go out for bid, and Ms. Perez will kind of walk you through the process and the recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Good evening. As Dr. Wilson mentioned, that we took a different process this year, and so what I wanted to do is just give you a brief history of the current coverage, give you a little bit of information so that you would understand where we are right now and what we are recommending for the board. Currently, the employer contribution, EVIT pays 100% for the employee-only coverage. We also contribute $17.04 into the employee's health savings account for those employees that are enrolled in the high deductible plan. We pay 100% of the cost for the employees pay 100% for the dependent coverage. They also pay for dental and vision. And EVIT pays 100% of the life insurance and disability up to $50,000. In terms of benefit eligibility, we have our regular full-time employees working at least 30 hours per week. And right now we have approximately 195 of those employees. We also have eligible dependents that would include the spouse and children to age 26. And then any regular part-time high school certified instructors are also eligible, provided that they work the 22.5 hours per week. In this particular scenario, it is the responsibility of the employee to pay for that coverage. We also, under our plan, have active school board members who are also eligible to participate that are currently serving on the board. Our current plan is fully insured through Kairos Health Arizona Trust. We have the medical claims, premium and enrollment are managed by Blue Cross Blue Shield. That is the network that we're using. We have dental with dental for the dental plan. Vision services plan is the provider network for the vision. And currently Kairos is administering the medical, dental, vision, life, and voluntary life, as well as the remaining items listed on here: telemedicine, HSA administration, COBRA, which is at no cost to EVIT, the EAP services. They do have an online benefit admin system, and then they have their consolidated billing for all of the vendors. I'm not sure if everyone on the board is familiar with the statute where it allows the school districts to participate and be self-insured by participating in one of the different available trusts. One being where it's only school districts are participants of it. One example is Asbate and Valley Schools. The other is school districts in other municipalities, which in this case, Kairos. And then the third is being a sole entity, being self-insured, and we have a couple of examples listed on here, Phoenix Union being one of them. For reference, EVIT has been participating in a health benefits coverage under a trust at least for the past 12 years, and I say at least because that's how far I went back in the records I had in my office. There's a good chance that it's been under longer than that, but I only had the 12 years. The last four within Kairos, and then prior to that was with Asbate. Just a little bit of a history in terms of the renewal rates that we have seen over the past 8 years. Back in 2014, 15 through 16, 17, we were with Asbate, and we saw a 9, 12, 22% increase. Then we transitioned over to Kairos, and at that point we had received a renewal rate of 25%, but we had the opportunity to explore a different plan at which at that point we saw a reduction as opposed to an increase. And then the other percentages is what we have seen. The current renewal rate for next year is estimated at 7% across the board. So one of the requests that we had for Human Resources was to go out and really analyze the marketplace and really see whether or not we were getting good rates within the available trusts. And what we did is we consulted with Capital Financial. They assisted us with an RFP process. We went out, issued a request for proposal in March. We received some responses, and I listed there in terms of which ones, the different plans that we received. We also received 2 additional what we call procurement compliant quotes, which basically fall within those trusts under the statutory that I mentioned earlier. We had a benefits committee that was comprised of having certified, classified employees, members of the leadership team, legal, obviously representing both Main and East and Power campuses. We also wanted to make sure that those that were participating under the committee, that were representatives of the different plan tiers that we have. in some cases being the employee-only coverage, the employee plus spouse, the employee plus family, because we wanted to make sure everyone was represented. We also had one that's under the medical waiver. The approach that the committee took was initially review all of the proposals that were received. Primarily, we were looking at comparing coverage, cost, the ease of the plan administration, and also the provider availability. We wanted to make sure that our employees had the highest number of options that were available. And our decision was, do we cancel that RFP based on those pieces, and go with a plan under a trust, or do we evaluate all the proposals? Using that criteria, the committee determined that it was best for us to cancel the RFP process and only evaluate the 3 submittals that we had under a trust, which were Kairos, Aspate, and Valley Schools. When we were reviewing the 3, we looked at the following criteria. We wanted to obviously be fiscally prudent. We wanted to make sure that the impact to the district was not, irresponsible. We also wanted to make sure that the financial impact to the employees under the different plans wasn't to where we were passing the burden of any of the savings onto the employees. We wanted to make sure that we weren't doing that. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are retaining our employees and that we're attracting qualified employees. Also, the financial impact based on the different scenarios. We obviously have our healthy population that only utilize the preventative coverage, but we also have employees that have the need for preventative care that's associated with some of the chronic illnesses. And obviously, we always have the unfortunate situations where we have those catastrophic events that really can drive our costs high. We also wanted to make sure that mental health coverage was taken care of within the plan offerings. And as mentioned earlier, the expanded network provider availability. For us, it was important that our employees had options. Regardless of the need that they had, we didn't want to be limited to one area. And the last 2 are ease of the administration and ease of the transition for the staff. We wanted to make sure that we weren't dealing with multiple vendors, not only for our administration component, but also for the employees. We didn't want them to have to go for dental to one place, for vision to another, that it was just one central place for them to be able to administer their services. It was based on that criteria. It is the recommendation of the committee that we continue with the plan that is currently being offered to our employees with Kairos. What this means is a 7% increase across both medical plans, both the core plan and the high deductible plan. It translates into a 564 district annual contribution increase per employee. Out of that, let me clarify, 564 per employee for the core plan. The high deductible plan is a little lower, but in order for us to have the same amount so that we are offering a free plan for all of the employee-only coverage, out of that, it's 120 that will be increasing the the contribution to the health savings plan. Also recommending the increase of the $282 increase to the medical waiver. Just a little bit of a highlight as it relates to Kairos is ambulance reimbursement is limited to $25,000. They also, one of the big pieces for us was that they extended preventative coverage to include a number of chronic conditions. For us, when we look at the different, I looked at the conditions. We do get a report not at the employee level, but just in general. We have about 72 employees that have been identified as having one of those conditions. It may be where there's a member that has multiple of those, but there's 71 incidents of having a chronic condition. So for us, it was important that the preventative was extended so that the out-of-pocket cost to the employees is going to be reduced. There's also a pharmacy change, and then they had vendor updates. They are transitioning from Blue Cross Blue Shield to United Healthcare with a different administrator, switching the EAP provider, their biometrics vendor, and their teledoc providers as well. So that really is the summary of the work of the Benefits Committee. Any questions?
Yes, Jeff Fleetum, I've got two questions. One is, and maybe you already mentioned it and I just missed it, it's a lot to absorb. Are the deductibles changing at all?
The deductibles only under the pharmacy, there is where they're transitioning away from the 90-day retail over to the mail in the copay that's associated with the prescription. There's minor changes there, but the rest for medical, they're not.
No deductible changes. Okay, and also on the preventative care incentive program, is $600 incentives?
Yes,
What was it last year?
it's the same.
It's the same?
We have done that for approximately, 6 years, I believe.
So the incentive, the employee incentive program for preventative care, does that result in any sort of a savings for us in our premiums, as it should?
Well, if I go back to the, when we started our plans, I think the $600 started back in 15-16 because we saw a trend of our rates going up. So we established a number of those, of the incentive in order to reduce. Unfortunately for us at the moment, what's driving our cost higher is that we've had 4 incidents, at least within the last 12 months, that have been at one time one of those catastrophic events that have really increased the rate. So it's difficult, given that they take those 2 items into account, to assess the direct relationship to the plan.
Yeah, so in other words, the insurance company we're buying from, our rates are based on how we encourage people to take this preventative care initiative.
No, the incentive is an EVIT only incentive that we started as a way to encourage our employees to to utilize the plan to seek those preventative recourses. So rather than waiting until something.
So, right, so then we wouldn't have the necessary claims and those kind of things. But all I wanted to know is if the insurance company knows this is this was brought up in a negotiation with them. Look, we have a $600 preventative health plan with their employees, so the underwriters with the insurance company and the risk assessment people know that, right?
They're aware of it, yes.
I have a question on the same line. How many teachers, percentage-wise or numbers, participated in that?
In the health incentive?
Yeah.
We actually have a very good participation rate. I don't have the numbers exactly, but I can say it's well above 75% of our employees taking advantage of it.
Wow.
We do an on-site biometrics at both of the major campuses. We also have the on-site mammogram. We also have the flu vaccine also on-site. So we try to do a lot of those that are available to do it on-site.
How many of them were able to get the incentive $600, percentage-wise maybe, out of 75%?
No, it's over 75 that do get it. Yeah, it's eligible. All employees are eligible. That is one of the conditions for us to be able to have that, is that we make it available to all employees.
So excuse me, so 75% of the employees got the max?
Yes, because it's only provided that they meet the 100 points, they get the 600.
The bottom.
Okay, so they get the 100 points, so, okay. Yeah, the reason I was asking about the 600 is the state is 200, so So, I mean, I'm not worried about that, and it just seemed like a lot, and I was also wondering how it's vetted. Is it an honor system, or do we track that somehow?
So what we do is, at the end of the year, we asked the employees to provide proof of, well, the on-site services, we know that they participated, but for anything that's additional, we ask them to provide proof.
Good. Yeah, I mean, these preventative maintenance, these preventative plans are awesome, especially when you start looking at cholesterol and blood pressure and all these other things, because they then cause many of these other problems, other root causes to some of those things. So, okay, thank you.
We also have a gym on campus, which is preventative medicine as well.
What was
For
that?
employees. We have a gym on campus for preventative. Just saying.
It's the mask.
I don't see any performance metrics for the last couple of years that we can compare, as far as percentages and things like that. And then the HDP plans, am I assuming that you have 4 of them look identical, but is it employee only and family on the paper that you've given us? It doesn't discern what they are.
So we have two plans. We have a core plan and then the high deductible plan that has the $1,500 deductible for the employee only. Within those 2 plans, there's the different tiers that we have where the employee can choose to do the employee only coverage, or if they choose to insure their dependents, spouse, or
Well,
as a
that's not
family.
indicated, so that's why I asked.
No.
Right. Yeah, on the chart, it doesn't have those listed.
Oh,
Also, the deductible is $1,500. The district is, let's say on the employee only, we're putting in $1,700 in their HSA. So what is the co-insurance amount for that person?
so
What's
the-
the total out of pocket for an employee only?
Right, so the max out-of-pocket, I believe, for an employee only is $3,500. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it is $3,500, the max.
So the deductible's $1,500, and then what's the percentage? How does that go to 35? Is it 10% of 20%?
20%.
Wow, okay,
Wow.
that's a lot. And do we have any kind of catastrophic claim coverage outside of the trust, or to cover these, potentially like $1 million claim or something like that?
So I do have a representative here from Kairos. I don't have that information. I don't know if you have that information to answer that specific question. I do know that as an employee, we do have the option through additional plans within Kairos that they offer that employees can choose, like cancer insurance and things like that, but that is up to the employee to make those selections. But if I'm understanding your question, you're referring more on as a district to prevent us from
Right.
having those increases. So
So if, any of the catastrophic, so as the trust, you guys have
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So as for the trust as a whole, since you guys are in a fixed cost program, so regardless if you have a claim that is, if you have a year that the district as a whole spends $1 or $1 million, you pay your premiums, and then anything above that, your neighbor, Chandler Unified School District, or another neighbor might be picking you up, or you might be picking them up. That's how we really get rid of the volatility of the healthcare stuff. So if you have $1 million claim, the trust, Kairos as a whole, has insurance to take over the catastrophic level. So anything over a $650,000 claim, that's when a reinsurance carrier is picking that up. And so when we do your renewals, or when we do look at the renewals, we do take that into account. We cap those losses at that amount so that you're not having to bear the whole $1 million claim. Does that answer?
It does.
Okay. And then the other question that you had just asked in regards to the deductibles, it is a $1,500 deductible. The maximum that they would ever have to pay in a given year for an employee only would be $3,500. For a
And
family,
what
it's,
rate is that co-insurance, after the deductible, at what rate is that paid?
it's an 80-20 split. So Kairos pays 80% of all of the claims, and then the employer or the employee is responsible for 20%.
That
Could you clarify, so that the high deductible, which is 1,500, the 1,500 is considered a high deductible?
Yes, yes, sir. I know, yes.
That's,
I-
that's really,
Does that
that's really an
It's real-
interesting high deductible, so, compared to a
well-
lot of $5,000 and $10,000 high
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
deductibles.
very low, high deductible.
And I will say that EVIT is very, I mean, they do treat their employees very well. They do have they have rich plans. I would say in general, across the board, public entities do typically have richer plan offerings. But I mean, at the same time, we think about a lot of the struggles that employees do have, with funding and everything. So we are continuing to try to keep those rates down as much as possible for those employees, so that we don't have to increase deductibles in order to afford them.
Are prescriptions included in the deductible and the co-insurance amounts?
Yes, sir. So for the high deductible, if it is on a preventative list, then the copays will kick in right away. If it is not on the preventative list, if it is a brand drug, then they're gonna have to pay that $1,500 prior to copays kicking in.
Okay, are there tiered drugs, or is it all just price straight across?
They're tier drugs, so we do have the generic, and we're really trying to push employees just to make sure we're really big into the education piece, right? And we know that with healthcare and the industry, it's extremely complicated, convoluted. A lot of employees don't know who to turn to for questions, and so we've also we brought on an on-staff or on-site nurse advocate for employees, so that they have somebody to reach out to ask, hey, do we have an alternative medication? Is there something else that I can look at? Do you know, who can I talk to for this? So we're really trying to give more resources to our employees as well.
Okay, are there drugs that you just flat won't cover? Or
Pardon me?
are there drugs that you will not cover, period?
Yeah, there are medications on the exclusion list. So if there is a medication, we hear about big pharma issues all over the news, and you'll find that there are compound drugs, for example, and it might be a Tylenol and another over-the-counter medication put together, and a lot of times a pharmaceutical company will charge about $6,000 a month for that medication. And so those are the ones that we're constantly looking out for to make sure that we're excluding those types of drugs. There's other medications that if there are generic alternatives, we will require the employee to try one of those alternative medications prior to selecting the brand drug.
So how long do you require the patient to try the substitute medication?
So a lot of times it'll depend. So if we do get we call it like a pre-auth from the doctor saying, hey, for medical reasons, they cannot take this, or they do not respond well, that will, kick in right away for that next month.
Because it's particularly a problem with statins.
Yes.
By the way,
yes.
so offering people
Simvastatin,
statins that
atorvastatin.
work, and you gotta take it for like a year.
Or they get the tingle.
One final question I have. What are your restrictions on hospitals? So if I have this plan, can I go to Mayo Clinic, and will the plan cover my Mayo Clinic costs?
Yes.
Which is just a hospital, by the way, so
Yes,
a lot of
sir.
people think it's like so they're pretty cool, so.
Yeah, we do. We do cover any of the hospitals that were in the Blue Cross Blue Shield network are also going to be in that United Healthcare.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'd like to thank Edith and the Benefits Committee. I mean, they pulled this together really quickly, but I think it was a process that was really well thought out, so that our staff could have input and really make an informed decision, and not have it be something that is just being done by the administration. I mean, it was a real thought out and informative plan, so thank you, Edith. I know it was a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. I would like to commend the whole committee for doing an outstanding job. At this time, do we have a motion on the health plan benefits for the year 21-22?
Jeff Fleetum here. I'd like to move that we approve the health plan.
This is second.
Was there a second? I couldn't hear.
Boggs seconded it.
Having a motion and a second, I'll ask, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington. Doolin.
Aye.
Fleetum.
Aye.
Hart. Boggs is an aye, and Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. That brings us to agenda item 8, the satellite programs. And I would like to propose the four districts, Cave Creek, Higley, Combs, and Tempe, be combined into one motion, unless a board member would like any one of those districts excluded for separate discussion. Is there any objection?
I have a question before I know if I have an objection or not.
Okay.
Of these school districts, just so I'm clear, I get a little confused sometimes. So these programs that we're approving, this is not our agreement, right?
No, Mrs. Doolin, that's the IGA.
Yes.
And that is what we have to negotiate with our sending districts in the fall of next year. And that's where our hope is, through some of the embedded credit work that we're going to get done between now and then, will allow us to have a deeper discussion and richer discussion on program offerings, both CTE offerings at the satellite, as well as the potential for embedded credit from EVIT back to the sending districts.
Okay, then I have no objection.
Then I'll ask Dr. Wilson to speak to each satellite program in the four districts.
At the same time.
Oh, that's
One at a time. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I lost what I was trying to thought. Could you please say that again, Mr. President?
Yeah, I don't know if I can repeat it exactly the same way. I was going to ask you to discuss the satellite programs in each of the districts in order, starting with Cave Creek and then moving to Higley and then to Combs and then to Tempe.
So let me clarify. You had asked if anybody had an objection to combining them. Just so we're
Correct.
clear, I don't have an objection to combining them. So do you still
That's
want?
what I assumed.
Okay, so he still wants, okay.
Okay, so Mr. President, members of the governing board, all of the sending districts follow the same sequence of approval. As we talked about several meetings ago, statutorily, there are certain requirements that must exist in order for a program to be identified and defined by the state as a career and technical education program. And you see those indicators in your backup. It's time, 51% of the time has to be hands-on. Is it specialized equipment? Is, industry support, all those different indicators. And so what we do is a two-part process, and admittedly, the second of the two parts has been a little bit negligent over the past couple of years, but I think it's obvious for the reasons why, because of COVID. And so we have the sending districts submit to us their completed information on a matrix. And so, for example, they'll submit to us the teacher's name and their certification, so that we can indicate that yes, that's a highly qualified teacher in the program that's being recommended. We'll ask them to identify a list of equipment that is specialized, and so that they'll give us a list of equipment that's specialized. We'll ask them for the scope and sequence of the program. We'll ask them to tell us, are there any additional, what's the stackable credentials? Ideally, what we would do is pick areas throughout the CTED and go visit those campuses, and have each of you as a board member join me or somebody from the administration as we visit those campuses to take a look at some of the programs. Just so I think I've told you this before, probably the best education I had as it relates to the CTED, the EVIT CTED, was when I took that opportunity the first year to go visit every single program. It really it makes you realize there are some really, really good things going on out in our sending districts. Also not some really, really good things, but that's the same thing here at this campus. And so I thought, that will be the goal as we move forward, to have the sending districts submit to us the matrix that, with the information, and then we'll pick random programs that we can go visit in order to make sure that we're understanding what's happening there. It gives you a chance to be on the campus. Ideally, too, it would be for new programs because we've walked all of the existing programs once already. So it would be ideal. The ideal would be to visit new programs within the different part of the CTED, so that we can have some assurance through our eyes that the programs are what they say in the course description. I don't know if that satisfied.
So are these new programs or just all the,
So
just
the
the ones
vast-
they're offering?
Great question. The vast majority are existing programs. I believe Higley has a couple new programs, and in the new, interestingly, the programs that Higley is asking to be approved that are new exist in one of the other high schools, but also has they're pushing as an online version. So, for example, cybersecurity, they're wanting it to be brick and mortar option, but also to do it online as an option as well, and which I think is actually smart of them, because we do know that there are some of our programs that potentially that would work. So Higley, I think, has two of those, and I want to say Tempe Union has maybe two, but they're not programs that don't already exist in the organization. So it's just replicating it on a different high school campus.
Okay, thank you.
My question is when we start school in August, some teachers resign, some teachers get hired. Do we have a check and balance on the teachers that are teaching those?
That's a very fair question, because we do know even there's one of Higley's right now, they are waiting to fill it to see if the program's approved, because they don't want to post an interview for the position until they know whether there's some assurance that the program's going to be there. So even in this situation, so what we ask them is that when they fill the position to please let us know, and then we'll circle back and make sure that we're monitoring it. The challenge with it is that, you know, as you realize, there's such a large number of positions across the valley. But we meet quarterly with the CTE directors, and part of what we'll ask them to do is to make sure that if they have a change within the program during that year, that they let us know, so we can have some assurance that they're a highly qualified teacher that's in the program.
Dr. Wilson, I have a question as well. It's just, pardon my ignorance here. When I look at like the Higley program that we're talking about under early childhood development, that's a new, it says a new program, right? Under the, there's three categories that say NA not applicable. Yep. One of them is standard, I can go all the way back down to the, so we got that, AR, SS, and CL. One of them is some sort of certification, the other one is some sort of standard. Does that affect how this moves on, or is that just, this kind of program doesn't have to have those things?
Good question, Mr. Fleetham. So what happens, it depends on this, if it's a two-course sequence, I think this is a 3, but if it's a 2-course sequence, the first year that it's being offered, there's not going to be a completed course, a completed sequence. So students won't, at the end of the first year, be able to take an assessment. There won't be the sequence of courses that need to make it completed. Same kind of thing if it's a 3rd. I think those actually are in a 3-year program that started last year.
Okay.
So this is year 2. Next year, they'll have the completed sequence, which would then require the testing, which would require all the other components to it.
Okay, so that then relating back to that, this being this year.
Correct.
That's why an assessment wouldn't be required.
Correct, because there's no students to assess.
Standard sequence is not a requirement.
Correct.
And then certification or.
Correct, but when they complete the sequence, which will be this time next year, then all of those will be complete. All those will be marked as yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other, pardon? I couldn't hear what was just said.
I don't think there was anything said.
Oh, okay.
That was Dolores.
Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the 4 satellite programs. For district. Confusing myself. To approve the satellites for each of the 4 districts. Do I have a motion?
Also move this, Mr. Covington, all 4 districts. That's one motion.
This is Rhonda.
Yes.
I'll make the second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
We did have it.
Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Leadham,
Aye.
Hart. Boggs is an aye, and Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. That brings us along to agenda item number 9, a call for executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03. Do I have a motion to convene to executive session?
So moved. This is Rhonda.
Jeff Fleetum, second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
We have to do that.
About going to executive session.
We don't have to go. Then I'll call for the vote. Or Ms. Boggs will call for the vote.
I will. Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Leadham,
Aye.
Hart.
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. We'll move to executive session.
Would you guys like to take a quick break?
I think we're ready to go, Mr. Watkins.
Are we ready? Are we all back in the public now?
We are.
Yes, we are.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion for what was discussed in executive session.
Okay, I'd like to move that we extend the contract of Dr. Wilson by 1 year, moving the expiration date from June 30, 2022 to June 30 of 2023, and granting this fiscal year a 3% increase.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
I have one question. This fiscal year is over.
Who's speaking?
Jeff Fleetum here.
I'll restate that to, let's amend that motion to state that the upcoming fiscal year for the 21-22 school year.
I second the updated motion.
I'll second it.
Do you have any updated statements?
Thank you.
Is there any? Pardon, I didn't hear that.
No, I think that's it.
Is there any,
No.
is there any further discussion on the updated motion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Plenum,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. That brings us to item number 11, I think, staff reports. Dr. Wilson?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, I will make this fast. As a reminder that at our next meeting, we're going to have an update from our PR department. Our virtual expo started last week and is finishing this week. If you haven't had a chance to log on to it, I would encourage you to do so. Largely because of the stories that are being told there by our students. It really was, it really is amazing to listen to. Our enrollment is still trending about 100 and 150 students ahead where we were this time last year. That's a little bit of a more narrow percentage than it was in weeks past, but we're still trending to have more students next year than we had this year. We did secure the two completion ceremonies, the 17th and 18th of May at Sloan Park. One will be for Power and one will be for Maine. No mascots yet, but we're still working on that. We did send a letter to all the sending district superintendents, inviting them to take advantage of the room for the students, the online students next year. Have not heard back from them, but we got that out. And you are, I believe Tammy's going to work with you on Cognia on the. We need volunteers from the governing board to be on an interview panel for our 5-year accreditation process. They're scheduling the interview from 10 a.m. on Monday, May 3rd via Zoom. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to Tammy. So, all of you can do it, but if it's going to be all of you, then we got to post it and do that whole kind of business. But we would at least like a few of you. So Monday, May 3rd, 10 a.m., to be interviewed by the accreditation company for our 5-year accreditation.
We're just
was
emailing
that date
her.
again, Dr. Wilson?
I'm sorry?
When was the date again?
It's Monday, May 3rd.
May 3rd.
That's more.
And unless there's any questions of me, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 12, the calendar. Does any board member have any additions to the, what is that, the 26th? Yeah, the meeting on Monday, the 26th. Any additional agenda items?
I'd like feedback on the virtual, how it's gone, how it went, their virtual,
Expo?
yeah, expo.
I'm still waiting feedback on our sending school districts that did not bus.
Oh, we're bringing that on the 26th too.
Do we need an agenda item for that?
For what?
No.
Discussion item.
Yes. Will you see to that?
Yep.
Okay. Then I think we're waiting for adjournment.
I
Do
so
I have a
move.
motion?
Second.
Can we have a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned.
Thank you all very much.